I'm standing at airport security, watching my sister Sarah screaming at me through the glass barrier, while her 7-year-old twins Danny and Emma cling to her legs, crying. My phone buzzes nonstop with furious texts from my parents, aunts, uncles, the entire family. "You selfish piece of garbage!" Sarah shouts loud enough for everyone to hear. "You ruined everything!" But for the first time in 28 years, I'm walking away, and I'm not looking back. 3 days earlier, I was sitting in my parents' living room for what my mom Linda called an emergency family meeting. The emergency? Planning our annual Henderson family reunion vacation to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Sarah had already claimed the head of the dining table like she owned the place, her laptop open with spreadsheets and booking confirmations scattered across the surface. "So Jed," she said without looking up, "I've got you and the twins in room 207. It's got 2 double beds, so you'll have plenty of space with Danny and Emma." I felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach. "Wait, what? I thought we were all getting our own rooms this year." Sarah finally looked at me with that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. "Come on. You know how expensive Gatlinburg gets during peak season. Besides, the kids love spending time with Uncle Jed. It'll be fun. Fun. Right. Just like it had been fun every weekend for the past 3 years when Sarah would show up at my apartment unannounced, dumping Danny and Emma on me so she and her husband Brad could have date nights. Just like it was fun when she called me during my performance review at work last month, claiming it was an emergency because she needed someone to pick up the kids from school. Just like it was fun when I had to cancel my first real date in 2 years because Sarah's babysitter supposedly got sick. My dad Robert cleared his throat from his recliner. "Son, you know how important family time is. Your sister works hard taking care of those kids. I work hard too, Dad. I just got promoted to senior analyst, and I've been putting in 60-hour weeks." "That's great, honey," my mom chimed in from the kitchen where she was preparing her famous sweet tea. "But Sarah needs support. Being a mother is the hardest job in the world." I looked around the room at my extended family. Aunt Patricia was nodding approvingly from the couch. Uncle Tom was buried in his phone, completely checked out. My cousin Mike had conveniently skipped this meeting entirely, probably knowing what was coming. "Where's Brad going to be staying?" I asked. Sarah's expression shifted slightly. "Brad and I are in the honeymoon suite. We need some alone time to reconnect as a couple. You understand." That was the moment something inside me finally snapped. After years of being volunteered for babysitting duty, having my weekends monopolized, my social life destroyed, and my career prospects threatened by constant family emergencies, I was done. But I didn't say anything. Instead, I smiled and nodded. "Sure, Sarah. Sounds great." Over the next 2 days, I played along perfectly. I helped Sarah research kid-friendly activities in Gatlinburg. I listened to her detailed itinerary of shopping trips and spa appointments shed planned while I watched Danny and Emma. I even suggested we take the kids to Dollywood, knowing full well I'd be the one chasing after them while Sarah relaxed poolside. But while Sarah was busy planning her vacation at my expense, I was making plans of my own. During my lunch break, I called my best friend Marcus, who worked as a financial advisor downtown. "Man, you need to grow a backbone," Marcus said after I explained the situation. "How long are you going to let your family walk all over you?" "It's complicated, Marcus. They're family. Family doesn't exploit family. When's the last time any of them did something for you without expecting something in return?" I couldn't answer because the truth was, I couldn't remember. Every family gathering centered around what I could do for everyone else. Every phone call was a request for help, money, or time. Every holiday meant me playing unpaid childcare while everyone else enjoyed themselves. That evening, I sat in my apartment researching flights to Portland, Oregon. I'd always wanted to see the Pacific Northwest, explore the mountains, visit the art museums. Places I'd never been because my vacation time always got hijacked for family obligations. By Thursday night, I had my plan. I booked a round-trip ticket to Portland, departing from the same airport at the same time as the family flight to Tennessee. I made a hotel reservation at a boutique inn near downtown Portland. I even arranged for a rental car. Friday morning, Sarah called me bright and early. "Jed, make sure you pack extra clothes for the kids. Danny always spills on himself, and Emma went through 3 outfits yesterday. Got it covered," I said, zipping up my own suitcase filled with hiking gear and guidebooks about Oregon. "Oh, and don't forget to bring your credit card for emergencies." You know how these trips can get expensive. Already in my wallet, along with my boarding pass to freedom. The irony wasn't lost on me that Sarah had been using my perfect credit score to book family vacations for years. My credit was spotless because I was responsible with money, while hers was destroyed from years of impulse purchases and missed payments. But somehow, I always ended up paying for everyone else's fun. As I drove to the airport Saturday morning, my phone rang. Sarah's contact photo appeared on my screen, a picture of her holding Danny and Emma at last year's beach vacation. The same trip where Id spent 5 days building sandcastles and applying sunscreen instead of relaxing. Just making sure you're on your way, she said. The kids are so excited to see Uncle Jed. I'm almost there, I replied, which was technically true. I was almost to the airport, just not the gate she expected. Walking through the terminal felt like stepping into a different life. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying a diaper bag, chasing after runaway children, or worrying about someone else's needs. I was just Jed, 28 years old, finally taking a vacation for myself. But as I approached my gate, I saw them. Sarah was standing near the family's departure area, frantically looking around while Danny and Emma sat on their suitcases looking bored. My parents were checking their boarding passes for the 3rd time. The extended family was gathering like they always did, with everyone expecting me to appear and fall into my designated role as the family servant. I pulled out my phone and typed a simple text message to the family group chat. Safe travels, everyone. I won't be joining you this year. Then I turned off my phone and walked toward my gate, leaving behind 28 years of being taken for granted. For the first time in my adult life, I was choosing myself over family obligation. The feeling was terrifying and liberating at the same time. The boarding announcement for my Portland flight felt like the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. As I settled into my window seat, I caught a glimpse of chaos erupting near the Gatlinburg departure gate 3 terminals over. Even from this distance, I could see Sarah's animated gestures as she spoke rapidly on her phone, probably calling me repeatedly. I kept my phone powered off during takeoff. For 2 hours and 47 minutes, I experienced complete silence from my family. No texts demanding my attention, no calls asking me to solve someone else's problems, no guilt trips about family obligations, just the peaceful hum of airplane engines carrying me toward a destination I'd chosen for myself. When I finally turned my phone back on after landing in Portland, it erupted with notifications. 43 missed calls, 117 text messages, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. The Henderson family network had gone into full crisis mode. The messages started confused and escalated to furious. Sarah, where are you? The plane is boarding. Dad, son, your sister says you're not here. What's going on? Mom, Jed, honey, please call us. We're worried sick. Uncle Tom, this isn't like you. Are you having some kind of breakdown? Aunt Patricia, young man, you need to explain yourself immediately. Then came Sarah's masterpiece of manipulation. Thanks a lot, Jed. Danny is crying, asking where Uncle Jed is. Emma won't stop asking why you lied to her. I hope you're happy knowing you broke 2 little kids' hearts, but the message that really got to me was from my dad. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this selfish behavior is unacceptable. We raised you better than this. Your mother is beside herself with worry, and your sister is devastated. I hope whatever you're doing is worth destroying your family relationships. I almost turned around right there in the Portland airport. 28 years of conditioning kicked in, filling me with guilt and shame for putting my own needs first. But then I remembered Marcus' words. Family doesn't exploit family. Instead of calling back, I took a taxi to the Riverside Inn, a charming bed and breakfast nestled in the Pearl District. The proprietor, a friendly woman named Janet, showed me to a cozy room overlooking the Willamette River. For the first time in years, I unpacked my own belongings without having to child-proof the space or worry about someone else's schedule. That first evening in Portland was magical. I wandered through Powell's Books, the legendary independent bookstore, browsing for hours without anyone tugging on my sleeve or asking for snacks. I ate dinner at a quiet bistro, actually finishing a meal while it was still hot. I took a sunset walk along the riverfront, watching people live their lives without any obligation to entertain, supervise, or financially support anyone else. But my family wasn't done with me. The messages continued flowing in throughout the evening. each one more guilt-laden than the last. Sarah had apparently convinced everyone that I'd suffered some kind of mental breakdown and abandoned my family responsibilities in their hour of need. Sunday morning brought a new wave of messages, but also something unexpected. My phone rang with a call from Jessica, a colleague from my accounting firm. "Jed, I'm sorry to bother you on vacation, but something weird is happening at work. Your sister called the main line yesterday claiming there was a family emergency and demanding that your vacation pay be directly deposited into her account. She said you were in the hospital and couldn't handle your finances right now." My blood went cold. She said what? I told her I couldn't do anything like that without your direct authorization, and she got really angry. She insisted she was your emergency contact and had the right to access your payroll information. When I refused, she hung up on me. I thanked Jessica and immediately called my bank's fraud prevention line. What they told me made my head spin. Over the past 3 years, there had been dozens of charges on my credit cards that I didn't remember authorizing. Hotel bookings, restaurant reservations, airline tickets, all coinciding with family events I'd attended. "Sir, we show several recurring charges that were set up with automatic payment. These were all authorized with your social security number and verified with personal information. Did you set up these recurring payments?" I hadn't, but Sarah had access to all my personal information from years of helping with family emergencies and tax preparation. She'd been using my credit to fund family vacations while making everyone believe she was the one being financially responsible. As I dug deeper from my Portland hotel room, the scope of the deception became clear. The Gatlinburg vacation we were supposed to be taking, booked entirely on my credit card without my knowledge. The beach house rental from last summer, my card. The Christmas ski trip where I'd spent the entire time watching kids while adults enjoyed the slopes, my card. Sarah had been systematically stealing from me while positioning herself as the generous sister who organized wonderful family experiences. Meanwhile, I was seen as the lucky brother who got invited on lavish trips, never realizing I was paying for everyone else's fun. But the financial theft was just the tip of the iceberg. When I called my bank to report the unauthorized charges, they connected me with their fraud investigation department. The investigator, a sharp woman named Detective Lisa Chen, asked me questions that revealed an even more disturbing pattern. "Mr. Henderson, we see that these charges began approximately 3 years ago. Did anything significant happen in your family around that time?" 3 years ago was when Sarah's husband Brad had been laid off from his construction job. It was when Shed started asking me to babysit more frequently, claiming they needed to cut expenses on childcare. It was when the family started positioning me as the generous uncle who loved spending time with the kids. "Sir, based on the pattern of these charges and the sophistication of the authorization process, this appears to be a long-term identity theft scheme rather than simple credit card fraud. Has anyone in your family had extended access to your personal documents?" Sarah had helped me with my taxes for the past 3 years, claiming it would save me money on preparation fees. She had copies of my social security card, birth certificate, and financial statements. She knew my mother's maiden name, my first pet's name, and every security question answer from years of family conversations. Sitting in that peaceful Portland hotel room, watching the rain fall gently on the Willamette River, I realized that my family hadn't just taken advantage of my kindness. They had been systematically stealing from me while making me feel guilty for not giving them even more. The loving sister who organized family vacations was a criminal who had stolen thousands of dollars from me. The devoted daughter who helped with family finances was a con artist who had manipulated our parents into enabling her theft. The struggling mother who needed support with childcare was using her own children as tools to exploit their uncle. I spent the rest of Sunday documenting everything I could remember, every unexplained charge, every family event that seemed unusually expensive, every time Sarah had volunteered to handle financial arrangements to make things easier for everyone. By Sunday evening, I had compiled evidence of over $40,000 in unauthorized charges spread across 3 credit cards and numerous family events. But more importantly, I finally understood that this wasn't about a ruined vacation or hurt feelings. This was about a sister who had been systematically destroying her brother's financial future while manipulating their entire extended family into enabling her criminal behavior. The text messages from my family were still coming in, but now I read them differently. Each guilt trip, each manipulation tactic, each attempt to make me feel selfish for protecting myself was part of a larger pattern of abuse that had been going on for years. For the first time since getting on that plane, I felt something stronger than guilt or fear. I felt anger. Pure, righteous anger at being victimized by the people who were supposed to love and protect me. And for the first time in my adult life, I was ready to fight back. Monday morning in Portland started with coffee and croissants from a local bakery, but my peaceful breakfast was interrupted by a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Jed, this is Mike Henderson. We need to talk." Mike was my cousin, a family lawyer who'd been noticeably absent from recent family gatherings. It assumed he was just busy with work, but his serious tone suggested something more complicated. "Mike, if this is about the vacation situation, I'm not interested in hearing another guilt trip. It's not about the vacation, cousin. It's about what your sister has been telling people about you. Can we meet somewhere private? I'm actually in Portland on business until Wednesday." 2 hours later, I sat across from Mike in a quiet corner booth at a downtown diner, watching my cousin's face grow more troubled as I explained what I'd discovered about the unauthorized charges and Sarah's financial manipulation. "Jed, there's something you need to know. Sarah and your parents have been coming to me for legal advice about your supposed financial problems for the past year." "What financial problems?" "My credit score is 760. I've never missed a payment on anything." Mike pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "According to Sarah, you've been struggling with gambling addiction and asking her to manage your finances to keep you from destroying your credit. She's been showing me bank statements and receipts claiming you've been irresponsibly spending money on online poker and sports betting." My hands started shaking as Mike spread out photocopied documents across the table. Bank statements from my accounts, but with transactions I'd never made, highlighted in yellow. Receipts from online gambling sites I'd never visited. Credit card bills showing purchases at casinos I'd never been to. "Mike, I've never gambled a day in my life. I don't even buy lottery tickets." I figured that out when I started looking closer at these documents. The gambling transactions are all perfectly round numbers. Exactly $100, exactly $250. Real gambling transactions are messy amounts. Plus, the IP addresses on the online accounts trace back to your sister's home computer. Sarah had been creating fake gambling transactions on my accounts, then using the stolen money to fund her lifestyle while positioning herself as the responsible sister trying to help her addicted brother. The family's perception of me as someone who needed constant supervision and financial support was based entirely on fabricated evidence. "There's more, Jed. Your parents asked me to prepare paperwork for financial guardianship. Sarah convinced them that you're mentally unstable and need someone else to manage your money before you destroy yourself completely." The room started spinning. "Guardianship? Like, shed control all my finances. Complete control. Your paychecks, your savings, your investment accounts, even your ability to make purchases over $50. Sarah presented it as a loving family intervention to save you from yourself." I stared at the forged documents spread across the table, finally understanding the full scope of Sarah's plan. She wasn't just stealing money from me. She was working to legally gain control over my entire financial life while convincing our family that it was for my own good. "Mike, why didn't you process the guardianship paperwork?" My cousin looked uncomfortable. Something felt wrong about the whole situation. "You've always been the most responsible person in our family." The gambling addiction story didn't match the Jedi I've known for 28 years. So I started investigating on my own. Mike pulled out another set of documents. The real investigation had been conducting without anyone's knowledge. Bank records showing the pattern of forged authorizations. IP address logs proving the fake gambling accounts were created from Sarah's computer. Even security camera footage from a casino showing Sarah using a credit card with my name on it. "Jed, your sister has been committing identity theft, fraud, and forgery for over 3 years. The evidence is overwhelming, but I needed the victim to come forward before I could take action." "Why didn't you just tell me what was happening?" "I tried calling you several times, but Sarah always answered and said you were too emotionally unstable to talk about financial matters." She claimed you'd been having anxiety attacks whenever money was mentioned, and that discussing finances would trigger a gambling relapse. Even my own cousin had been manipulated into believing Sarah's lies about my mental state. Shed isolated me from potential allies by convincing everyone that protecting me meant keeping me in the dark about my own exploitation. "There's something else," Mike continued. I've been getting calls from other family members with concerns about Sarah's behavior. Aunt Patricia noticed discrepancies in Sarah's stories about family finances. Uncle Tom mentioned that Sarah borrowed money from him last year, claiming it was for your medical bills, but he never saw any evidence of you being sick. What medical bills? Exactly. Sarah has been running smaller cons on extended family members, always claiming the money is to help you with various crises that don't exist. She told Aunt Patricia you needed money for addiction counseling. She told Uncle Tom you had medical debt from anxiety treatment. She even convinced Great Aunt Dorothy to send $500 for your supposed car repair bills. The web of lies was staggering. Sarah hadn't just been stealing from me. She had been using my fabricated problems to con money from our entire extended family. Everyone thought they were helping their troubled nephew and grandson, when actually they were funding Sarah's lifestyle. Mike, how much money are we talking about total? From what I can document, at least $60,000 from you directly, plus another $15,000 from various family members who thought they were helping you. And those are just the transactions I can prove. $75,000. Sarah had stolen enough money to buy a house while positioning herself as the family hero who was sacrificing to help her troubled brother. Meanwhile, I was seen as the family burden who needed constant financial and emotional support. What happens now? I asked. Mike closed the folder and looked me straight in the eye. That depends on you. I have enough evidence to file criminal charges for identity theft, fraud, and forgery. But I need you to formally press charges and testify about what she's done. What about the rest of the family? They'll never believe Sarah could do something like this. Actually, I think you'd be surprised. Aunt Patricia has been suspicious for months. She's the family matriarch, and her opinion carries a lot of weight. If she supports you, others will follow. I thought about my family back in Gatlinburg, probably enjoying their vacation while talking about my selfish behavior and mental health problems. They had no idea they were victims of the same person who'd been victimizing me. Mike, I need to ask you something honestly. Do you think I'm the only family member Sarah has been stealing from? My cousin hesitated before answering. I think Sarah has been running financial cons on multiple family members for years. You're just the biggest target because you have the best credit and the most stable income. But I suspect she's been stealing from your parents too. Probably from Aunt Patricia. Definitely from some of the older relatives who don't monitor their finances closely. The picture was becoming clear. Sarah wasn't just my abusive sister. She was a career criminal who had been systematically stealing from our entire family, while using manipulation and lies to cover her tracks. The family vacation drama wasn't about hurt feelings. It was about Sarah's panic when her primary victim suddenly became unavailable. One more thing, Jed. I've been tracking Sarah's spending patterns. And she's gotten sloppy lately. She's been using your credit cards for increasingly obvious personal purchases. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, hotel stays that don't correspond to any family events. I think she's gotten overconfident and careless. Or desperate, I said. Finally understanding why Sarah had been pushing so hard for financial guardianship. She knows she's about to get caught, so she's trying to gain legal control over my money before I figure out what she's done. Mike nodded grimly. If I had to guess, I'd say Sarah is in serious financial trouble. Her husband doesn't know about any of this. He thinks their lifestyle is funded by Sarah's savings from her part-time job. But Sarah hasn't actually been to that job in months. She quit, fired, according to my sources, for stealing from the register. But she's been leaving the house every day pretending to go to work, probably spending time planning her next scheme. I sat back in the diner booth, overwhelmed by the scope of deception and manipulation that had been orchestrated against me and my family. Sarah wasn't just a selfish sister who took advantage of family generosity. She was a career criminal who had built her entire life on lies and theft. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't facing it alone. I had an ally who understood the law, evidence to prove my innocence, and a path forward that didn't involve continuing to be victimized. Mike, I said, pulling out my phone, I'm ready to press charges. But first, we need to warn the rest of the family about what Sarah has really been doing. Are you sure you're ready for that conversation? It's going to get ugly fast. I looked out the diner window at the Portland skyline, thinking about how peaceful my life had felt for the past 3 days without Sarah's manipulation and drama. Then I thought about my parents, Aunt Patricia, and all the other family members who were being conned by someone they trusted. I'm ready. It's time to tell the truth. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected call from Marcus back home. He'd been avoiding most calls from familiar numbers, but Marcus had been my one consistent ally through this situation. Jed. Man. You need to know something important. I've been keeping track of Sarah's behavior since you left, and things are getting weird. I was sitting in Pioneer Courthouse Square, watching Portland residents go about their morning routines, when Marcus dropped a bombshell that changed everything. I've been dating Casey Williams for about 6 months now. You know Casey. She's been Sarah's best friend since high school. Marcus, why didn't you tell me you were seeing someone? Because I knew it would be awkward given the family situation. But Casey's been feeling guilty about something for weeks, and after what happened at the airport, she finally told me the truth. My heart started racing. Casey had been a constant presence at family gatherings for years. Shed witnessed every manipulation, every guilt trip, every instance of Sarah dumping childcare responsibilities on me. Casey has audio recordings, Jed. Hours of conversations where Sarah brags about stealing your money and manipulating the family. She's been recording Sarah for months because she knew something was wrong, but didn't know how to stop it. What kind of recordings? Marcus' voice got serious. Sarah talking about her plans to get you declared mentally incompetent so she can access your inheritance. Sarah laughing about how easy it is to forge your signature. Sarah coaching Danny and Emma to tell people that Uncle Jed acts scary if anyone asks them about you. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Sarah had been using her own children as weapons in her campaign to destroy my reputation and steal my money. There's more. Casey recorded a conversation where Sarah talked about her backup plan if the guardianship thing didn't work. She was going to stage some kind of incident during the family vacation to make it look like you had a complete mental breakdown. Then she'd have grounds to have you committed for psychiatric evaluation. Committed? Like, to a mental hospital. Involuntary psychiatric hold. Casey says Sarah researched the laws and found out that if 3 family members sign affidavits claiming someone is a danger to themselves or others, they can be held for 72 hours for evaluation. Sarah was planning to use the vacation as an opportunity to manufacture evidence of you being unstable. The scope of Sarah's plan was breathtaking. She hadn't just been stealing money. She'd been systematically destroying my reputation and relationships to position herself for complete financial control over my life. My decision to skip the vacation had probably saved me from being falsely imprisoned. Marcus, can Casey meet with me and Mike? We're building a case against Sarah, and those recordings could be crucial evidence. That's the other thing I need to tell you. Casey's scared. Sarah has been calling her non-stop since Sunday, demanding to know if Casey has been spreading lies about the family situation. Sarah threatened to destroy Casey's relationship with her own family if she doesn't stay loyal. Sarah threatened Casey. More than threatened. Casey works as a dental hygienist at Dr. Peterson's office downtown. Sarah called Dr. Peterson yesterday and told him that Casey has been stealing prescription medications and selling them. Completely fabricated, but Sarah claimed she had evidence. Casey almost lost her job until Dr. Peterson realized the accusations didn't make sense. Sarah was escalating her criminal behavior, targeting anyone who might expose her schemes. But her desperation was also making her sloppy and providing more evidence of her willingness to commit crimes to protect her fraudulent lifestyle. There's something else. Casey overheard Sarah on the phone with someone yesterday, talking about liquidating investments to cover what she called temporary borrowing from family accounts. I think she knows she's about to get caught and she's trying to return stolen money before anyone notices it's missing. Whose investments? Your parents. Probably Aunt Patricia's too. Casey thinks Sarah has been stealing from multiple family members and mixing all the money together. Now she's panicking and trying to cover her tracks before the family gets back from vacation and starts asking questions. I was sitting in a Portland park, 3,000 miles away from home, while my sister was apparently committing additional crimes to cover up her existing crimes. The situation was spiraling out of control. But for the first time, I had allies who understood what was really happening. Marcus, I need you to do me a favor. Contact Aunt Patricia directly and ask her to call me. Don't go through my parents or anyone else. Just Patricia. Can you do that? Sure, but why Patricia specifically? Because Mike thinks she's been suspicious of Sarah for a while. If anyone in our family is going to believe the truth about what Sarah's been doing, it'll be Aunt Patricia. 3 hours later, My phone rang with a call from my great aunt. "Jed, honey," Marcus said, "you needed to talk to me about something important. Are you all right, sweetheart?" Aunt Patricia had always been the family's moral center, a retired school principal who didn't tolerate nonsense from anyone. If I was going to win over any family member, it would be her. "Aunt Patricia, I need to tell you something about Sarah that's going to be hard to hear." For the next hour, I explained everything: the financial theft, the forged documents, the fake gambling addiction story, Mike's investigation, Casey's recordings. Aunt Patricia listened without interruption, asking only occasional clarifying questions. When I finished, there was a long pause before she spoke. "Jed, I want you to know that I never believed the gambling story. It didn't match the young man I've known your entire life. But I also want you to know that Sarah has been stealing from me too." "What do you mean?" "6 months ago, Sarah came to me claiming you needed money for addiction counseling that wasn't covered by your insurance. She said you were too proud to ask for help directly. So she was trying to raise money from family members to surprise you with the gift of treatment. I've never been to addiction counseling. I know that now. I wrote Sarah a check for $2,000 to help with your treatment costs. When I asked her for updates on your progress, she kept giving vague answers and changing the subject. Then I started noticing other inconsistencies in her stories. Aunt Patricia had been conducting her own investigation, documenting Sarah's lies and inconsistencies for months. As the family matriarch, she wielded significant influence over family opinions and decisions. "Aunt Patricia, what do you think we should do?" "I think we need to call an emergency family meeting the moment everyone gets back from Gatlinburg, not to discuss your selfish behavior, but to confront Sarah with evidence of her criminal activity. I'll handle organizing the meeting and making sure everyone attends." "What about my parents?" "They're completely convinced that Sarah is the responsible one trying to help her troubled brother. Your parents are good people who've been manipulated by someone they trusted. Once they see the evidence, they'll understand they've been victims too. The question is whether Sarah will continue lying when faced with proof of her crimes." "Mike thinks we have enough evidence for criminal charges." "Good. Sarah needs to face legal consequences for what she's done. But more importantly, this family needs to understand how we allowed one person to manipulate and steal from multiple family members for years without anyone speaking up." As I finished the call with Aunt Patricia, I realized that the family vacation Sarah had been so desperate to control was almost over. In 24 hours, my family would be returning home, expecting to continue their usual dynamic of enablement and manipulation. But this time, they'd be walking into a confrontation with evidence, allies, and consequences that Sarah couldn't charm her way out of. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the isolated family member facing Sarah's manipulation alone. I had Mike's legal expertise, Casey's recorded evidence, Marcus' support, and Aunt Patricia's moral authority. Sarah had spent years building a house of lies and theft, but house of cards, no matter how carefully constructed, eventually collapse when someone finally decides to tell the truth. And I was ready to start telling the truth, no matter how much it hurt to acknowledge that the sister I'd loved and trusted had been systematically destroying my life for years. The family meeting Aunt Patricia was planning would be unlike any Henderson family gathering in history. But for the first time in 3 years, it wouldn't center around what I could do for everyone else. It would center around what everyone else was going to do to make sure Sarah faced consequences for what she'd done to me, to them, and to the family bonds we'd all trusted her to respect. I returned home Thursday evening, but instead of going to my apartment, I drove straight to Marcus Place. Head offered his guest room as neutral ground where I could meet with allies and prepare for what was coming without risking unexpected visits from family members. Casey was already there when I arrived, sitting nervously at Marcus' kitchen table with a small digital recorder and a folder of printed documents. She looked exhausted, like someone who'd been carrying a terrible secret for too long. "Jed, I am so sorry," she said before I even sat down. "I should have said something years ago, but Sarah made me believe that everyone knew about the financial arrangement and was okay with it." "What financial arrangement?" Casey pressed play on the recorder, and Sarah's voice filled the room with a clarity that made my skin crawl. "The best part is that Jed actually thinks he's being generous when he pays for these vacations. He has no idea I'm using his credit cards because I set up all the automatic payments. He just sees one monthly charge and assumes it's his share of family expenses. Meanwhile, I'm booking premium suites and five-star restaurants on his dime while he thinks he's paying for budget accommodations. The recording continued with Sarah laughing about forging my signature, bragging about how easy it was to manipulate my parents, and describing her plans to gain financial guardianship over me. But the most chilling part was when she talked about using her children as tools. Danny and Emma are perfect little witnesses. I've taught them to say that Uncle Jed gets angry and scary when money is mentioned. I told them it's a game we're playing to help Uncle Jed get better, so they think they're being helpful. If anyone official ever interviews them, they'll repeat exactly what I've coached them to say. I had to pause the recording. Hearing Sarah coldly discuss using her own children to frame me for mental instability was worse than discovering the financial theft. Those kids trusted their mother completely, and she was teaching them to lie about their uncle to authority figures. Casey, how long has she been talking like this? At least 2 years that I know of. But recently, it's gotten much worse. She's been talking about accelerating her timeline because she thinks you're starting to get suspicious. Casey pulled out printed screenshots of text messages between her and Sarah from the past month. Messages where Sarah complained about me asking too many questions about family finances. Messages where Sarah discussed her backup plans if the guardianship strategy didn't work. Look at this one from last week, Casey said, pointing to a particularly damning text. Sarah wrote, "If Jed doesn't cooperate with the legal arrangements, I might have to arrange for him to have an accident that requires psychiatric hospitalization. Nothing permanent, just enough to establish a pattern of instability." She was planning to hurt me, or frame you for hurting yourself. Sarah researched involuntary commitment procedures and found out that if you're brought to an emergency room claiming to be suicidal or homicidal, they have to hold you for evaluation even if you deny it. She was planning to stage some kind of crisis during the vacation. Marcus leaned forward grimly. "Casey, show him the recording from last Monday." The next audio clip was from the day after Eid left for Portland. Sarah's voice was panicked and angry. "That little bastard ruined everything. 3 years of planning, and he chooses now to grow a backbone? I've got payments due on credit cards he doesn't even know exist. If he starts investigating his finances, I'm screwed." The recording revealed that Sarah had been using my identity to open credit cards I didn't know about, maxing them out for her personal use while making minimum payments to avoid triggering fraud alerts. The vacation crisis wasn't about hurt feelings. It was about Sarah's panic that her primary victim was becoming unavailable. "There's more," Casey said, pulling out bank statements. "Sarah's been stealing from your parents too. She convinced them to make her a joint account holder on their savings account in case of emergencies. She's been withdrawing money regularly and claiming it's for your medical expenses or addiction treatment." The statements showed a pattern of withdrawals that corresponded to Sarah's personal purchases: hair salon visits, designer clothing, expensive dinners at restaurants she'd never taken the family to. My parents had been unknowingly funding Sarah's lifestyle while believing they were helping their troubled son. How much has she stolen from them? About $12,000 over the past year. She's careful to keep the withdrawals small enough that your parents don't notice, but frequent enough to fund her spending habits. While Casey and I went through the evidence, Marcus had been working his phone contacts. As a financial advisor, he had connections with law enforcement and fraud investigators. "I've got good news and bad news," Marcus said, hanging up from a call. "The good news is that Detective Rodriguez from the Financial Crimes Unit is willing to meet with us tomorrow to review the evidence. The bad news is that Sarah's escalating her behavior." "What do you mean?" "My contact at the bank says someone tried to access your accounts this morning using forged power of attorney documents. The bank flagged it as suspicious and denied the request. But it means Sarah is getting desperate. Mrs. Rodriguez, my elderly neighbor from the apartment complex, had also called Marcus with disturbing news. Someone matching Sarah's description had been seen near my apartment building multiple times over the past 3 days, apparently trying to determine if I was home. She's probably looking for financial documents or evidence that could incriminate her, Marcus explained. If she can destroy the paper trail, it becomes much harder to prove the extent of her theft. But Sarah had made a crucial mistake. That afternoon, my building's security cameras had captured her using a key to enter my apartment. The problem was, I'd never given Sarah a key to my place. She must have made a copy during one of her emergency visits, I realized. Remember all those times she claimed she needed to drop off the kids unexpectedly? She was probably searching my apartment for financial information and making copies of important documents. Marcus called Mrs. Rodriguez, who confirmed she'd seen someone matching Sarah's description leaving my apartment carrying a large bag around 3 o'clock that afternoon. "We need to call the police right now," Casey said. "That's breaking and entering." "Actually," said a familiar voice from Marcus' front door. "That's exactly what we're going to do." Mike had arrived with Detective Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in family financial fraud cases. "Mr. Henderson, I understand you've been the victim of identity theft and financial manipulation. I'd like to hear your story and review the evidence you've gathered." For the next 2 hours, we laid out everything. Mike's legal documentation of forged signatures and fake gambling transactions, Casey's recordings of Sarah discussing her criminal plans, bank statements showing unauthorized charges and withdrawals, security footage of Sarah entering my apartment without permission. Detective Rodriguez listened carefully, taking detailed notes and asking pointed questions about timing, amounts, and witnesses. "This is one of the most comprehensive family fraud cases I've seen," she said finally. "Your sister has committed multiple felonies: identity theft, forgery, fraud, burglary, and criminal conspiracy. The evidence you've gathered is more than sufficient for arrest and prosecution." "What happens next?" I asked. "We execute a search warrant on your sister's home and seize all financial documents, computers, and phones. Based on the recordings suggesting she's coached her children to lie, we'll also need to interview Danny and Emma with a child psychologist present." "Will the kids be okay?" Detective Rodriguez softened slightly. "Children are remarkably resilient, Mr. Henderson. But they need to understand that what their mother taught them to say isn't true. And they need to know that none of this is their fault." "What about the rest of my family? They don't know anything about Sarah's criminal behavior." "That's where things get complicated. Your family members who were also victims will need to file their own reports and provide statements. But they'll also need to understand that they may have unintentionally enabled Sarah's behavior by not questioning her stories about your supposed problems." Detective Rodriguez explained that family fraud cases often involve multiple layers of manipulation, where the primary perpetrator convinces other family members to participate in the victim's isolation and exploitation without realizing they're being used. Your parents, aunt, and other relatives aren't criminals, but they'll need to confront their role in allowing this situation to continue for years without investigation. As the detective prepared to leave, she handed me her card and gave me instructions for the next steps. "Mr. Henderson, I need you to stay away from your apartment until we've processed it as a crime scene. Your sister's unauthorized entry means we can gather evidence there. I also need you to avoid contact with your family until we've made arrests and conducted interviews. Sarah might try to pressure them into destroying evidence or changing their stories." "When will you arrest Sarah?" "Tomorrow morning. She doesn't know you've uncovered her schemes, so she won't be expecting law enforcement involvement. Well, have her in custody before she can destroy additional evidence or flee." After Detective Rodriguez left, the 4 of us sat in Marcus' living room, processing what was about to happen. By tomorrow evening, Sarah would be in jail, facing multiple felony charges. My parents would learn that their daughter was a criminal and their son was the victim they'd been unwittingly helping to abuse. The family gathering Aunt Patricia was planning wouldn't be a conversation about hurt feelings and vacation disappointments. It would be a reckoning with years of manipulation, theft, and betrayal that had torn our family apart while masquerading as love and concern. "Jed," Casey said quietly, "I want you to know that Sarah's actions don't reflect on you in any way. You're not responsible for what she chose to do, and you're not obligated to forgive her just because she's family." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was surrounded by people who understood that protecting myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Sarah had spent years teaching our family to enable her abuse, while making me feel guilty for having boundaries or needs. But tomorrow, the truth would finally come to light. And for the first time in 3 years, my family would have to confront the reality that the person they'd trusted most was the one who'd been hurting all of us. Friday morning arrived with the sound of my phone buzzing at 6:30. Detective Rodriguez was calling with an update that would change everything. "Mr. Henderson, we arrested your sister an hour ago at her home. She's being processed on charges of identity theft, fraud, forgery, and burglary. But we also discovered something during the search that you need to know about." I sat up in Marcus' guest bed, my heart pounding. Sarah was in the process of destroying evidence when we arrived. She had a fire going in her backyard, burning what appeared to be financial documents. Our officers were able to recover some partially burned papers that show the scope of her criminal activity was even larger than we suspected. What do you mean? She's been stealing from at least 6 different family members, not just you and your parents. We found forged checks, copied credit cards, and fake loan documents involving multiple relatives. We're talking about over $100,000 in total theft across your extended family. $100,000. Sarah had built an entire criminal enterprise around exploiting her own family members' trust and love for each other. Detective, what about her children? Are Danny and Emma okay? Her husband Brad is cooperating fully with our investigation. He had no knowledge of Sarah's criminal activities and believed their lifestyle was funded by her part-time job and careful budgeting. Hess agreed to bring the children in for gentle interviews with our child psychologist. How is Brad handling this? Hess devastated, but Hess more concerned about protecting his kids than defending his wife. When we showed him evidence of Sarah coaching the children to lie about you, he immediately agreed to supervised visitation only. He doesn't want his children around someone who would use them as weapons. By 9 o'clock, I was sitting in Detective Rodriguez's office reviewing additional evidence discovered during the search of Sarah's home. Financial records showing systematic theft from Great Aunt Dorothy, Uncle Tom, Aunt Patricia, and even family friends who'd trusted Sarah with emergency financial help over the years. Your sister had detailed files on each family member's finances, work schedules, and personal vulnerabilities. Detective Rodriguez explained. She'd been studying all of you like marks in a con game, figuring out who to target and how to manipulate them effectively. The detective showed me notebooks in Sarah's handwriting documenting each family member's weaknesses and how to exploit them. Next to my name, she'd written, guilt-motivated, conflict-avoidant, strong credit, steady income, no romantic relationship to interfere with availability. She's been planning this for years, hasn't she? The evidence suggests your sister began small-scale financial manipulation shortly after her husband's job loss 3 years ago, then escalated to identity theft and systematic fraud. What's particularly disturbing is how she used family love and concern as weapons against all of you. The phone rang, interrupting our conversation. Detective Rodriguez listened briefly, then hung up with a grim expression. That was the child psychologist. She's finished preliminary interviews with Danny and Emma. The children have been coached extensively to lie about multiple family members, not just you. Sarah taught them to say negative things about anyone who might question her stories or investigate her behavior. What will happen to the kids now? They'll receive counseling to help them understand that their mother's behavior wasn't their fault and that telling the truth is safe. Brad is a good father who's been kept in the dark about Sarah's activities. He'll maintain custody with support services. An hour later, I was driving to Aunt Patricia's house for a family meeting unlike any in Henderson history. One by one, my relatives arrived, looking confused and concerned about the urgent gathering. Uncle Tom, Great Aunt Dorothy, my parents Robert and Linda, and several cousins filed into Aunt Patricia's living room with no idea what was coming. I've called you all here, Aunt Patricia began, because we've discovered something terrible about Sarah that affects our entire family. For the next hour, Mike presented the legal evidence while Detective Rodriguez explained the criminal charges. Casey played selected recordings that demonstrated Sarah's calculated manipulation of family relationships. I showed financial documents proving years of systematic theft. The room was completely silent as the scope of Sarah's deception became clear. My dad sat with his head in his hands, realizing he'd been emotionally abusing his innocent son while defending his criminal daughter. My mom cried quietly as she understood that the family emergencies Shed funded were fabricated cons. Uncle Tom was the first to speak. Sarah told me Jed needed $500 for car repairs last month. I wrote the check because I wanted to help my nephew. She stole that money. All of it, Detective Rodriguez confirmed. Sarah created fake crises involving multiple family members to justify emergency financial requests from relatives. None of the emergencies were real. Great Aunt Dorothy looked stunned. She said Jed was too proud to ask for help with medical bills from his anxiety treatment. I've been sending money for months. One by one, family members realized they'd been victimized by someone they'd trusted completely. But more difficult was confronting their unwitting participation in my isolation and emotional abuse. My dad finally looked at me with tears in his eyes. Son, I am so sorry. I thought I was protecting Sarah and the kids from your problems. I had no idea you were the one being hurt, Robert, Aunt Patricia said firmly. We all owe Jed apologies. We allowed Sarah to manipulate us into mistreating him while she was systematically stealing from our entire family. The hardest moment came when my mom spoke up. Jed, honey, can you ever forgive us? We failed you so badly. We should have questioned Sarah's stories instead of just believing them because she's family. Mom, you were victims too. Sarah is very good at manipulation. Detective Rodriguez cleared her throat. There's one more thing you all need to know. Based on evidence we found, Sarah was escalating toward more serious crimes. Shed researched procedures for having family members involuntarily committed to psychiatric facilities. Mr. Henderson's decision to miss the vacation likely prevented a situation that could have resulted in false imprisonment charges. The room erupted in shocked voices as family members realized how close Sarah had come to having me falsely imprisoned in a mental health facility. Detective, Uncle Tom asked, what happens to Sarah now? Shell faced trial on multiple felony charges. The evidence is overwhelming, so her attorney will likely recommend a plea agreement involving restitution, probation, and mandatory counseling. Shell also faced civil lawsuits for financial damages. Aunt Patricia stood up and addressed the room with the authority of the family matriarch. I want everyone here to understand that Sarah's actions don't just affect her victims financially. She's damaged our family's ability to trust and support each other. We all need to examine how we enabled this situation by not questioning her stories or investigating her claims. What do you mean? My cousin asked. I mean that for 3 years, we allowed one person's lies to turn us against Jed while she systematically stole from multiple family members. We chose to believe the worst about someone we've known his entire life, instead of asking hard questions about inconsistencies in Sarah's stories. The family meeting continued for another 2 hours as relatives shared stories of Sarah's manipulation that they'd previously dismissed or ignored. Patterns emerged showing how Shed isolated potential allies from me while positioning herself as the family's financial manager and information hub. By evening, my family understood that they weren't just victims of financial fraud. They'd been manipulated into emotionally abusing someone they loved while enabling criminal behavior they should have detected years earlier. The hardest part was seeing my parents' devastation as they realized they'd spent 3 years treating their innocent son like a burden while celebrating their criminal daughter's apparent generosity and responsibility. But for the first time in years, I wasn't alone in dealing with family dysfunction. Everyone in that room had been victimized by Sarah's manipulation, and everyone was committed to making sure it never happened again. As I drove home that evening, to my own apartment, finally free from Sarah's unauthorized access, I realized that losing my family's false perception of Sarah meant gaining their genuine understanding and support. The sister who'd stolen my money, destroyed my reputation, and manipulated our family relationships was facing criminal consequences for her actions. But more importantly, the family members who'd been unknowingly enabling her abuse were committed to building healthier relationships based on truth instead of manipulation. Justice was being served, but healing was just beginning, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I was facing that healing process surrounded by people who finally understood what had really been happening in our family for years. 6 months after that awful day at the airport, I'm sitting in the same Portland hotel where I first discovered the truth about Sarah's crimes. But this time, I'm not here escaping from family drama. I'm here celebrating the launch of my new nonprofit organization, Dignity Defenders, which helps families recognize and address financial abuse. The transformation in my life has been remarkable. The inheritance money from Aunt Patricia, $200,000 that was originally intended for Sarah, became the seed funding for an organization that's already helped over 50 families deal with similar situations across the country. Sarah pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges and was sentenced to 3 years probation, 800 hours of community service, and full financial restitution to all her victims. She also agreed to supervised visitation with Danny and Emma, who are thriving in their father Brad's custody with regular counseling support. Brad and I have developed an unexpected friendship, Hez raised his children with complete honesty about their mother's behavior while making sure they understand that none of her choices were their fault. Danny and Emma now visit me regularly. Real visits where we build model airplanes and bake cookies. Not manipulated babysitting arrangements designed to exploit my kindness. The relationship with my parents took the most work to rebuild. Robert and Linda Henderson committed to family counseling and have spent months examining how they allowed Sarah's manipulation to damage their relationship with their son. My dad wrote me a letter last month that I'll treasure forever. Jed, I failed as your father when I chose to believe lies about you instead of trusting the young man I raised. I know I can't undo the pain I caused, but I want you to know that I see who you really are now. I'm proud of the strength you showed in standing up to abuse, and I'm proud of the man you've become despite our failures to support you. The extended family has also transformed. Aunt Patricia has become a mentor and business advisor for Dignity Defenders, helping develop educational materials about family financial abuse. Uncle Tom leads support groups for male family fraud victims, sharing his own experience of being manipulated by Sarah. Even Great Aunt Dorothy, at 84, volunteers at our outreach events. My romantic life has flourished now that I'm not constantly available for family emergencies or financially drained by someone else's exploitation. Jessica from work and I have been dating for 4 months, and she's amazed by stories of my previous family dynamics. I can't imagine the Jed who just accepted being treated that way, she told me recently. The man I know has strong boundaries and advocates for himself. The most rewarding part of this journey has been speaking at conferences about family financial abuse. Just last week, I addressed a gathering of social workers and therapists about recognizing the signs of familial exploitation. Family financial abuse is often invisible because it's disguised as love, generosity, and concern. The abuser positions themselves as the helpful family member who's managing money, organizing events, and solving problems. Meanwhile, they systematically isolate their victim from support systems while training other family members to enable the abuse. The response to these presentations has been overwhelming. Social workers reach out regularly, asking for resources to help families in similar situations. Adult children contact me describing manipulation patterns they recognize in their own families. Parents ask for guidance about protecting elderly relatives from financially abusive family members. Casey and Marcus got married 3 months ago, and I was honored to serve as Marcus' best man. Their relationship began because they both recognized something was wrong in my family situation and chose to support me instead of enabling Sarah's abuse. They're now regional coordinators for Dignity Defenders, helping establish support groups in rural communities. The most difficult part of this journey has been accepting that Sarah may never acknowledge the full impact of her actions. She completed her court-mandated counseling but continues to minimize her behavior, claiming she was just trying to help family members manage money better. Her probation officer tells me this is common among family financial abusers. They often maintain that their manipulation was motivated by love rather than greed. But I've learned that my healing doesn't depend on Sarah's remorse or acknowledgement. It depends on my commitment to building relationships based on mutual respect and healthy boundaries, rather than exploitation and guilt. The children have been the most resilient part of this story. Danny, now 8, told me recently, "Uncle Jed, I'm sorry Mommy taught us to say mean things about you. We didn't know she was lying." Emma, his twin sister, has become interested in helping other kids whose families have problems, asking thoughtful questions about why adults sometimes make bad choices. Brad has remarried. A wonderful woman named Karen, who works as a teacher and brings stability to the children's lives. Karen has embraced the kids' relationship with me and often jokes that they're lucky to have an uncle who actually enjoys spending time with them instead of seeing it as a burden. My work with Dignity Defenders has taught me that family financial abuse affects millions of Americans across all economic and social backgrounds. We receive calls from wealthy families where one sibling systematically steals from elderly parents, middle-class families where financial manipulation masquerades as help with budgeting, and struggling families where abuse involves stealing government benefits or disability payments. The common thread is always the same. Someone uses family love and trust as weapons to exploit people who care about them. The victim is often isolated from potential allies through lies and manipulation, while the abuser positions themselves as the responsible family member trying to help with financial problems they've actually created. But the most important lesson I've learned is that standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole. For years, I believed that being a good family member meant accepting whatever treatment my relatives decided I deserved. I thought boundaries were selfish and that love required unlimited availability and financial sacrifice. Now I understand that healthy family relationships require mutual respect, honest communication, and clear boundaries. True family love means wanting the best for each other, not exploiting each other's kindness and generosity. The day I walked away from that airport gate wasn't the day I ruined my family vacation. It was the day I saved my family by refusing to continue enabling criminal behavior disguised as love. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop allowing them to hurt you. Sometimes the person everyone thinks is causing problems is actually the only one telling the truth. And sometimes you have to lose your family's false perception of you to gain their genuine respect and understanding. My family relationships today are stronger than they've ever been because they're built on honesty instead of manipulation, respect instead of exploitation, and genuine love instead of guilt and obligation. The phone call I received this morning perfectly illustrated how far we've all come. My mom called to tell me she'd read about a similar financial abuse case in the local newspaper and wanted to make sure our local authorities had information about Dignity Defenders services. "I never want another family to go through what we put you through," she said. "I'm proud of what you've built from such a terrible situation." Standing here in Portland, looking out at the same view that gave me peace 6 months ago, I realized that the worst experience of my life became the foundation for the most meaningful work I've ever done. Sarah's betrayal and manipulation taught me lessons about resilience, boundaries, and authentic relationships that I never could have learned otherwise. The family that once saw me as a problem now sees me as someone who had the courage to tell the truth when it needed to be told. The relatives who once enabled my abuse now actively work to prevent it from happening to others. And the young man who once accepted being financially and emotionally exploited because he was afraid of losing his family's love has become someone who helps other families recognize that real love doesn't require accepting abuse. If you're watching this story and recognizing patterns in your own family relationships, I want you to know that seeking help isn't betraying your family. It's protecting yourself and potentially protecting them from their own harmful behavior. Financial abuse thrives in silence and isolation, but it can't survive transparency and accountability. Have you ever found yourself constantly giving financially or emotionally to family members who never seem to reciprocate or appreciate your sacrifices? Have you noticed family members who always seem to have emergencies that require your immediate help, but never seem to improve their situations? Do you have relatives who claim to be helping you manage money or problems while actually making those problems worse? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more content about family, relationships, and personal boundaries. And please share this story with anyone who might benefit from understanding that family love should lift you up, not tear you down. Thank you for taking this journey with me. And remember, you deserve relationships built on respect, honesty, and genuine care. Don't let anyone convince you that accepting abuse is the same as showing love. Until next time, keep defending your dignity.